Thanks for joining me for another video, and this is my first of 2018, or my first random album review of 2018 anyway. Hope you're all having a good year. And today I'm going to be taking a look at the latest album of many by King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, Gumboot Soup. At the end of 2016, the band announced that they were going to be releasing 5 albums in 2017. Subscribe. Yeah, the first one was Flying Microtonal Banana. The entire album was done using, I think they used guitars with extra frets put in them so that they could, rather than having, they used quarter notes. So rather than 12 notes to an octave, they were using 24. Oh God, I'm boring myself. Second album was Murder of the Universe. This was 3 stories, or should I say this was told as 3 separate stories. Kind of instrumental, but with spoken word over it, which told 3 separate stories. Divided some people, good musically, but I think some people were a bit put off by the actual spoken word aspect. But solid album, I thought. Come on. Next up they had Sketches of Brunswick East, which was more of a jazz themed album, and in fact the actual title itself was an ode to, I think it was the place where they grew up, or a suburb anyway, in Melbourne, Australia, where they all grew up, Brunswick East. And I think it was also a reference to Miles Davis's album Sketches of Spain, which again went with the jazz theme of the album. Stop going on! The 4th album was Polygonawannaland, I think that's how you pronounce it, and I seem to remember it being announced that this was going to be their last album, so people weren't sure if they were going to do the full 5 albums or not. This was an interesting one because they basically just put up an announcement saying that the album was free, it belonged to everyone, you could take it, do what you wanted. And I think some people have actually gone on to distribute it themselves, make vinyl of it. They released the master files online, I think, and people went ahead and did what they did with it. So this is definitely a band who are pushing things and doing their own thing, which is always great. Oh, things I do for these reviews. And then on December 30th, 2017, they released Gumboot Soup, which is what I'm going to be reviewing today. Just get on with it. Now, the band have been going since 2010, and they've released 13 albums already, 5 of which were last year. They're an Australian band fronted by Stu Mackenzie, who I believe is the mastermind behind the band, but sounds like all the members are kind of genius in their own right. Subscribe already. I'm not going anywhere. If you had to categorise them, which everyone loves to do, I guess you'd probably put them in the psychedelic garage acid rock category, but there's way more to them than that. They seem to experiment with whatever they feel at the time, and make albums accordingly. I am going to be around a lot. The influences of the band are many, but the most obvious ones are 60s and 70s psychedelic music like Zappa, Pink Floyd, The Doors. In fact, I think the name was actually originally they wanted to, I think Mackenzie wanted to call the band Lizard King after Jim Morrison. One of the other members wanted something else, so as a compromise they came up with the name King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. Most of their albums have a concept running through them, which I don't believe there is on Gumboot Soup. I'm going to say right from the beginning, I love this album. It's fantastic. I only started getting into them a couple of months ago, and literally as soon as I heard the first album I heard, I went straight out the next day and bought whatever albums I could find of theirs. So without further ado, let's take a look at some of the songs. Come on, move on. First song on the album is Beginner's Luck. This has quite a chilled out hippie vibe to it, very reminiscent of Afternoon Delight by the Starland vocal band, and also got kind of elements of Crosby, Stills and Nash within. Woods. Yeah, next up we have the really psychedelic, trippy, wah-tastic Greenhouse Star Death, is it? Greenhouse Heat Death. This is one of the standout tracks for me. Full of sitar and Indian type guitar scales, along with some really psychedelic, trippy, droning lyrics. Really, really great song. Love this one. Back to Work Tomorrow. Next up is Barefoot Desert, which has a kind of Syd Barrett era Pink Floyd vibe to it. Some great bass lines in this. A New Dawn. Muddy Water continues the 60s, 70s type vibe, and got very strong elements of King Crimson on this song. Like I said, they pull their influences together from a very wide pool. I'm not sure if it's supposition or superposition. I'm not sure what this one is. Maybe I should learn English properly. This is probably the most modern sounding of of their songs on this album. Sort of more synth based, and I think it's more of a modern drum and keyboard sound. It's more the drum and bass on here that sounds a bit more up to speed. The production of it sounds a bit more what you would find on contemporary albums. Things get into a more funky style for the next song. Down the Sink. Kind of Red Hot Chili Peppers style bass and guitar lines. Good song. Now we get into one of my favourites on the album, and this is The Great Chain of Being. Leave a comment. I absolutely adore this song. This is amazing. If you beefed up the production a bit on this song, had some heavy guitars, this could easily sit on a doom metal. Album. I could see this being on an Electric Wizard or Sleep album. Has those Black Sabbath style riffs, droning, big guitars, and plodding bass line, plodding drums. The lyrics on this are just great. It's a real stomper. Yeah, like this one's going to be any better. Next up is The Last Oasis. This is return back to the more sort of jazzy. It kind of reminds me a bit of 07. Some of these bits. Next up we got a bit more of a return back to the acid garage rock with All Is Known. That'll do. Another one of my favourites next is I'm Sleeping In. This is just such a chill out. This is such a real chilled out song, this one. Kind of got a Tame Impala kind of bass line. Who are fellow Australians. Really enjoy this one. Very chilled out, as the name would suggest. In depth. And we return once again more to the chill out jazz stylings for the final track, The Wheel. Decent enough close to the album. Overall, I'd probably give this album a solid 8 out of 10. Happy New Year. It's full credit to the band that they delivered the 5th album as promised. I think there was some debate as to whether they would actually do it or not, and even bigger credit to them for actually releasing 5 solid albums as well. None of them were bad at all. It just goes to show what people can do when they put their minds to it. Back in the 60s, even the 70s, it wasn't uncommon. It was kind of standard practice for bands to release more than one album in a year, like Sabbath and Zeppelin, the Beatles. So it's nice to see bands doing that. Not been here before. So yes, that was Gumboot Soup. Final album. of 2017, of the 5 albums they promised and delivered. Be interested to see where they go next. I'm sure it won't be too long before the next one. And yes, as soon as that album comes out, I will review that as well. Enough. So that was King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. There'll be a review up very shortly, if not already, of Swedish black metalers Watain with their latest album. And next week I'm going to be doing a review of Corrosion of Conformity's new album. And I haven't decided what my random review is going to be yet, so but there will be something, so make sure you check back. Yeah.